next is Tae-Ho, which among many distinctions was the Minister of Trade for Korea a few years ago.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Tae-Ho from South Korea. I would like to join first previous speakers in thanking WPC organizers, particularly Professor Thierry Montbrial for inviting me to this wonderful occasion. Well, in my presentation for this session, I would like to briefly discuss the responses of the business sectors to recent changes that have taken place in the global world trade environment. I have classified the cases 4 different categories. And for each case, I look at the effect of the change. And then I also look at the de-risking behaviors of the global firms, and then overall result, respectively. How do I go? Maybe this one? No?
Is that okay? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Back.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you can see, the first case, the incidence of the COVID-19 pandemic, you know this very well, and the recent wars. And if you look at this, as you know very well, the immediate effects of these incidents are disruptions in supply of materials, parts, component, agricultural product, energy, and so on. In response to these effects, global firms diversify the input sources. And in this way, we reduce excessive dependence on a few countries or regions for their business activities. Of course, the firms may have lost some efficiency, but they are able to develop more stable supply chains and increase their geo-economic resilience. We should note that in these cases, some new economies participated in the global value chain. And some trade experts recognize this as a positive so-called Re-globalization effect coming from maintaining interdependence without overdependence. Let's look at the next case where US imposes tariffs and non-tariff barriers on imports from China during the Trump's first presidency and the current Biden administration. The effect, of course, is decline of bilateral trade between the two countries. I don't have any specific data, but this is true. And naturally, Chinese firms try to circumvent US trade restrictions. So Chinese firms invested and produced in the so-called third-party countries. Some experts are calling them connector countries like Vietnam and Mexico, and export their product to the US market. As a result, investment in these countries and their export to the United States increased. Trade experts see this phenomena as another positive re-globalization effect, which mitigate harms produced by a policy of decoupling. Let me turn to the third case, where US imposes strict restrictions against China in certain high-tech products based on national security concerns. As you know very well, exports of high-end semiconductors to China declined, as not only the US, but also other countries following the same measures of US, stopped exporting them to China. So China faces difficulties to import high-end semiconductors needed for their advanced sector. And other countries which used to export high-end semiconductors to China struggle to find alternative export markets. This is clearly a kind of a de-globalization effect, which worsened fragmentation in global trade. The last case is where the US measures on EV subsidies discriminate foreign producers in EV batteries using materials and parts. They name this from the Foreign Entity of Concern, FEOC, but this means China, actually. They didn't name the country, but this means actually China. As a result, the US imports of EVs fall foreign EV producers seek to produce in the United States, and foreign EV battery manufacturers diversify their input sources of critical minerals and parts. In this case, some economies emerge as a new supply sources for minerals and parts for EV batteries. However, overall global trade in EVs and EV batteries is negatively affected, worsening fragmentation in global trade flows. So from these four cases, we see that business sectors have made proper adjustment through re-globalization, although there are some areas where de-globalization effects appeared a little bit significantly. Well, next slide, this is the second to the last, is regarding our concerns that US-China tensions might be intensified when the second term of President Trump begins next year. President-elect Trump has been talking about imposing universal tariff of 10 to 20%, 60% tariff on goods, on Chinese goods, and 25% tariff on goods from Mexico and Canada, even though Mexico and Canada are their USMCA partners. So if all these tariffs are implemented, well, we expect quite negative effects to prevail in the global trade. I mean, we don't know whether these tariff measures are actually implemented. And ironically, if these are implemented, US may face inflationary pressure from these measures. We talk about this in the first session or second session in the morning. Also, Chinese export to United States through third-party countries will decrease, and China will export these products to other markets, which may cause negative spillover effects. Therefore, positive re-globalization benefits will diminish, increasing negative de-globalization effects. The last slide is some suggestions. I think many people are sharing this suggestion for the future global trade order. Firstly, even though it sounds kind of naive, like-minded countries, particularly middle power countries, raised their collective voices and urged the US to take a leadership role in reinvigorating the multilateral trade governance by reforming the WTO. Second, WTO member countries with similar interests and positions should pursue open plurilateral trade agreements in areas such as trade in services, investment, and digital trade. The third suggestion is that the WTO member countries work together to reach agreements on areas of common interest, such as climate change, public health, and food security. Lastly, but not least, like-minded WTO member countries should strengthen WTO rules on subsidies to discipline unilateral industrial policies. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being very specific. I think it's good to move from general observation to specific cases. I believe that during the general conversation, we will discuss if there are enough like-minded countries to reach a critical mass, but that's another point. But thank you very much.